Okay. Let us begin. Hi, I'm speaking to you from Naarm, Melbourne, whose traditional owners are the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. And I pay my respect to their elders, past and present, and the elders of the lands where you come from. Today, now with your permission, we'll share our learnings over the course of the next hour. The Reinventing the Wheel series is an initiative of the Knowledge House for Craft, which is an association of thinkers and makers that aims to reflect the global diversity of the field. Each of these talks becomes a spoke in the wheel, a growing repository of craft knowledge. And I wish to acknowledge my colleagues in this endeavour who are present: Patricia Flanagan, Peter Carlin, Linda McIntosh, Leila Al-Hamad, some of them who are joining us, and I commend you on your work towards this. We started the series with Arti Kulra, who recounted the development of an Asian model for craft in the 20th century, which embraced tradition. Then Leila Al-Hamad looked at the Arab model, which gives smell a central place. For Lagi Mama, the Moana perspective offered a customary framework for craft. Then Linda McIntosh revealed the role of royalty in Laotian craft, and from Senegal, Joseph Ndioni introduced the One Village, One Product movement, which reflects a broader focus on handmade production outside the West. Tae-Yung Cho spoke about the role of universities in the development of Korean craft. Ezra Shales then offered a US perspective that considered the presence of craft in industrial settings. We then joined with the Journal of Modern Craft to explore the emergence of a new craft, the mask. And last month, Patricia Flanagan introduced us to the Haptic Interface project, which offered ways of translating craft skills into other media. Now, inspired by the discourse of our Tongan colleagues, we call on the previous speaker to make a salutation before we begin. Patricia, would you like to offer us a greeting?
Thanks, Kevin. So I'd also like to begin today by acknowledging the Awabakal people, the traditional custodians of the land where I'm working today, and pay my respect to their elders past and present, and extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are in this forum today, or perhaps watching this talk in the future. And a warm welcome to Professor CHEN, who I'm passing the speaker's banner to continue this discussion on craft and its revival in today's China. So I want to also thank Kevin for hosting this discussion series, because it's vital that we have these conversations about the craft industry and professions, and our responsibility in terms of acknowledging craft as a means of value creation and not value extraction. It seems that we as a society have got a bit confused between the notions of taking and making. And in modern capitalism, value extraction is rewarded more highly than value creation. And yet we all know that it's that creative, productive process that drives healthy economies and societies. So today I'm very pleased and excited to welcome Professor CHEN to discuss what it might mean to be entrepreneurial and a leader in crafts revival in China in such an uncertain world as the one that is appearing under the conditions of COVID-19. Let alone a future of material resource scarcity, where our connections to materials through crafts may be one such value for contemplation. So a warm welcome to everybody here in the forum, and Yin Cheng, I'm really looking forward to your talk. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Patricia, and for passing the baton, as you say. Now, as in the famous quote from Confucius, "Is it not delightful to have friends coming from afar?" I first saw Professor CHEN deliver a wonderful lecture at an event in Qingdao, which coincided with a visit of the World Crafts Council. I was impressed with the focus at Tsinghua University on practical action in reviving China's traditional crafts. This is reflected in his story for Garland about a project to rejuvenate the tradition of New Year cards. He also wrote an incisive article about the participation of embroiderers from Suzhou in the Venice Biennale. I've since witnessed at first hand his efforts to coordinate the revival of lacquer in China and the rest of the world. Lacquer may seem an antiquated medium today, replaced by ubiquitous plastic, but his project reveals its social, artistic, and poetic depths. I follow Professor Chen on WeChat, where he shares many links to contemporary Chinese scholarship in the crafts. I've come to appreciate the breadth of activity that we know so little about outside China. Hopefully, this Chinese perspective will become a pillar of the Knowledge House for Craft. And I welcome Professor Anning Chen, and I hand over the floor to you.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. It's my great pleasure to share something about Chinese traditional crafts. I will share my screen. This is my topic today. ICH Safeguarding China went through two stages. The first stage focused on identification. The second stage focused on revitalization. Since 2015, the Ministry of Culture and Tourism took two measures to revitalize the traditional crafts. The first brought craftsmen from their community to university. Since 2015, there are over 100 universities has been involved in this project, and over 100,000 craftsmen were benefited by this project. Take my university as a stance. The craftsmen will study for 1 month in campus, listening to lectures, visiting museums and studios, and they make crafts show in campus so that communicate with students and teachers. And they have group discussion for graduation exhibition. I think this help them understand their tradition more deeply and understand the contemporary world to improve their innovation ability. After 1 month study, they will go back home and make their works. Then there will be a graduation show. During this process, we know each other and be best friends. Then we'll go to their community, visit the workshops, and keep contacts with them for a long time. These are some of the works they made, which use traditional materials, skills, but integrate into modern life in function. This is some kind of pottery for tea. The second measure to revitalize the traditional crafts is to bring universities or other institutes to craft community, have to build a local ecology. Take an example of what we did in Jinzhou traditional crafts workstation. Lacquer art originated in China 8,000 years ago. It developed to the first peak in Jinzhou, which once was the capital of Chu state. 2,000 years ago, Chu was the largest state in China, which represents a culture from middle and lower Yangtze River area. As you know, there are two big rivers in China. One is Yellow River, the other is Yangtze River. They gave birth to two different cultures. Unfortunately, the Chu state was defeated by Qin state in 223 BC. Lacquer art of Chu has been lost for 2,000 years. Until in 21st century, it developed from reproduce of antiquities to Chu style lacquer art, which has been identified as a national asset. Jinzhou workstation focused on Chu style lacquer art. It was authorized by Ministry of Culture and Tourism and is run by free parties, one of which is my university, Tsinghua University. Our mission is to revitalize the Chu style lacquer art in Jinzhou City, benefit related ISH items in Hubei province, promote lacquer industry and culture in whole China. Since 2018, each year there will be one international conference, one exhibition, and one competition for lacquer art in Jinzhou. So that attracted major practitioners in and outside China. Mr. Kevin Murray came twice. You can see on the basis of the personal networks, we initiated a lacquer art alliance, which includes 21 ISH items of lacquer art in China and has a strong connection with Japan and Korea. In the summer of 2019, we started a lacquer tour throughout China, visited members of lacquer alliance, collected materials, tools, and works to build a lacquer art museum in Jinzhou. Now we have a network, an active alliance. Our target is to revitalize not only the Chu style lacquer art, but also the Chinese lacquer culture. After 3 years running, the Jinzhou workstation got 3 core competence. The first, technology, lacquer tree planting, lacquer processing, lacquer well making. The second, resources, lacquer alliance around China include Japan and South Korea. The third, a platform, we supported by the Ministry of Culture and Tourism, so we can promote our project in a broad area. And we got 4 functions. The first, talent training. The second, basic research. The third, design, produce, and sales. The fourth, give assistance to local culture and tourism industry and rural revitalization. As regard to the technology competence, we built one factory for testing and refining raw lacquer, which can help lacquer tree farmers raise their incomes. We built another factory for lacquer body production in our workstation. We introduced master workshops, built lacquer classrooms by which training students organizing lacquer craft competitions. We promoted a new brand for Chu style lacquer art and established several living spaces for showing and selling lacquer wares. The brand image is a double-head pig, which comes from a mythical beast of ancient true state. The lacquer box of double-head pig functions as a travel food container, which contains 8 wine bowls, 1 lunch box, and 3 wine pots. You can see Liu Huan, she opened the box and put the cups and the pots outside. And she also helped us design our logo of brand, the two-head pig, which means harvest. We settle with our core competence and functions. Now we can do help to local community. We settle 2 rural revitalization stations and Jinzhou workstation. 1 is in Badong County, a lacquer tree planting mountain area 3 hours drive from Jinzhou city. You can see the lacquer tree and the farmer who is collecting the lacquer. The other is a craft village, belongs to Jinzhou. The village is famous for bamboo weaving and woodworking. However, the craftsmen in the village have forgotten how to use natural lacquers to varnish and coat their products. We can help them, not only teach the skills of lacquer art, but also help them develop rural tourism. In the outskirts of Jinzhou city lies the relic of Jinan city, which was the capital of Chu state for 400 years and was destroyed by the army of Qing state in 278 BC. The workshops for lacquerware and pottery were buried under soil for over 2,000 years. We are building a craft town just beside the relic. The Jinzhou workstation will move to the craft town in next year. The true state lacquer art finally came back home after 2,000 years. The revival of true lacquer art is like a phoenix nirvana. As you know, the ancestors of Chu didn't like dragons. They worshiped phoenix. That's a story I'll share with you about craft revival in today's China. Kevin.
Thank you so much, Professor Chen, for sharing with us the extraordinary tale of lacquer in today's China. And I just want to remind everyone present that you're welcome now to participate in the discussion. Feel free to provide a question in the chat so we can queue your questions. But I thought it would be quite good to begin with a fairly general question, which is about the meaning of a traditional craft like lacquer in China today. And this is a question that comes from a perspective outside China, because we see China as a very ambitious country that has a lot of focus on economic development, certainly uplifting people from poverty, as well as eventually overtaking other countries in GDP and economic growth. And at the same time, we see a country that focuses on advances in technologies, certainly computer technologies, medical technologies, and so on. These are all advances that reflect a kind of a modernism, a sense of progress is growing and finding new discoveries. So for us, what you present seems different. It's looking to the past and reviving something which was lost. And I just wondered if you could reflect a little on why this is important in China today, why universities like yours are spending so much effort in doing this, and it has obviously the support of so many people. What does it mean in China now to revive a culture from more than 2,000 years old?
Okay. I came from Hubei province. You know, the Jinzhou is in the Hubei province. So in some kind of, in a certain way, we are some distance from the true state. We have a cultural identity for that. I think this is a drive behind the revival of Black Art in Jinzhou. It connected to cultural needs more than to the economic development. I think it is more about people's feeling about cultural identity. Where we came from is an important question. However, as you know, the tradition in China has been deliberately destroyed, especially in Cultural Revolution. And after the open and reform, in the past 40 years, as you said, as you say, the modernization and urbanization went very fast in China. So the people stay away from nature and say goodbye to the past. But with the improvement of economic growth and the quality of life, the relationship between man and nature, between man and his past, became more and more important. The traditional crafts use natural materials. If you walk in the forest of lacquer tree and see farmers gathering the sap, you can smell and touch the nature. That's the first contemporary value of traditional crafts. The second value of it is the relationship between ancient and modern content in crafts. For example, the true style lacquer art contains a feeling, a self-identity of people who believe that they are descendants of true. That is to say, the people who now live in Hubei and Hunan province. Scarcity leads to value. People will pay for what they lack and what they need. For the revival of traditional crafts, economic development goes after the cultural development. And furthermore, craft is not the most profitable business today. So people do crafts, mainly not for making money, but for emotional needs. Doing craft is today an artistic way of life. It brings happiness and satisfaction to people's lives. Not all of them, but at least some of them are fascinated with the crafts.
Thank you.
Kevin.
So it's interesting that you say it's a product of not necessarily a reaction against government, but against development, but it's a way in which people, once they have economic security, they can then focus on other needs, such as cultural and emotional, that something like lacquer can provide, which is a very interesting perspective on this. Could I ask you just to stop sharing your screen so we can now see other people who are with us? And I would like to invite Liliana Moraes currently from Japan, a Brazilian in Japan, who has a question about the initiative. Liliana, would you like to pose your question?
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Professor CHEN, for your talk. It's quite interesting. I work in Japan, and wondering how also some of those ideas can apply to revival of traditional crafts here. And I was wondering if you could explain a little bit more about the program to bring craftsmen to the universities, kind of the origin of the program, who was behind kind of the support and the sponsorship, things like that. Thank you.
The sponsorship came from the Ministry of Culture and Tourism, and they paid for all the courses we gave to the craftsmen. And there are over 100 universities has been involved in this program.
Thank you. I was wondering, if you allow me a quick question, if this project was the idea for the project came from crafts people, from university. Do you know about the kind of origin of putting this program into place? Was like the government decided and then applied it to university, or did it come from kind of a need that people felt within the university? I don't know if you have that kind of information, sorry.
Okay, because the craftsmen, they need to go to university for a short time to communicate and learn something they don't know before. For example, they can learn how to design, and then they can know how to sell their products. Their masters can't teach them how to do that, so they need it. And the education level of craftsmen is normally not very well as in Japan. I know in Japan the masters, they often have a good education, but in China it's not.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Risha.
I ask a question here. And, I'm wondering, was there any activities that involved the university learning from the craftspeople so that their knowledge, was valued? So we kind of flip. I saw workshops were they workshops intended that the craftspeople would share their knowledge?
Yes. During the 1 month of their study in campus, they will show their skills to our students. And then we'll go back to their community to learn more about their knowledge. Did you see some photos I showed in my PowerPoint? A lot of students, the undergraduate students, I just 2 weeks ago, I brought them to Jinzhou workstation and visited the craftsmen there. I brought 20 students there, and they have a very, they learn a lot about crafts, traditional crafts.
It seems similar to a program I was working with a university in Guiyang, and they have lots of practitioners surrounding paper making, and they had a really nice project where the students would go and act as an intern, as a resident, do a residency with the craftsperson. But they didn't, as far as I know, they would invite the sort of elders in to work with the students, for the elders to teach, for the craftspeople to teach, but not so much. So I'm interested that there was a discussion where you were teaching them design skills as well.
Yes, for the project I show here is mostly about the craftsmen go to university to learn, but in other programs they will go to university to teach.
Just to make a point that it responds well to Hae-Young Cho's presentation about craft in South Korea, where universities played a significant role, more or less to the exclusion of any other spaces. So masters, she was saying, could be brought in to teach a specific skill, but they were given no status in the university. And this led to some resentment. And I think it's very interesting to look at the model of the workstation as one which offers a more equal footing between the academic and the craftsperson. So, Professor Chen, can you say something about the history of the workstation? Is this a recent development in China, and does it have roots in other traditions related to craft in China? And are there many other workstations besides Qingzhou in China?
Yes, the traditional crafts workstation initiated in 2016. And now there are about 20 workstations around in China. 20, and they're all supported by the Ministry of Culture and Tourism. And each year there will be some conference or exhibitions. All the workstations will join the conference and the exhibition to share to each other.
And can you give an example of what some of the other workstations are and what their crafts are?
For example, another workstation is in Guizhou, just like the lady mentioned, in Guizhou. In Leishan is a small town in Guizhou province, and is run by another school. Is a school for crafts and for arts and crafts in Suzhou. Have you ever? Do you know that school is a college famous for arts and crafts in Suzhou? And they run the workstation and have the village, the craftsmen to improve their skills and they can help them get more incomes, especially in the small villages.
No, it's a very interesting model for people outside China to look at. We've had the Bauhaus as a model that offers relatively equal status between knowing what and knowing how, and there are attempts to revive that now in Europe, but the workstation is one I think we could look at more closely. I wonder, since Huan Yu, you have joined us on screen, it might be nice to hear from you in terms of your impressions of lacquer and its appeal to younger Chinese. How do you think younger Chinese would look at lacquer? Because we associate it with, as Professor Chen has shown us, something ancient, something of the past.
And to be frank, I have no idea about lacquer until I meet Professor Chen, until I went to Jingzhou. That's as soon as I know a little knowledge about lacquer, I think it's a magical material. It's so natural, but it has so many functions that that other industrial products can't have. For example, it can protect objects to get bad, and it can protect us from the bacterial, and and it can resist it can remain perfect through 1,000 years. And actually we have a word that described the night is qi hei. We have a particular color from how to say, the concept. We have a color of black, a specific black that has something to do with lacquer, because the black that the lacquer shows is something very Chinese.
Yes, it evokes poetry from the Tang Dynasty and poetry about the moon as well.
as for the workstation of Jingzhou, I think I will provide a perspective that has something to do with the economy, because I think the industry of tourism is the Chinese government. The Chinese government put many focus on the industry of tourism, but before the tourism makes money only from tickets of many touristic sites, but the tickets won't cover the economy. And the Chinese government want to make some improvements for the tourism. So they think that our culture can improve our tourism. And if you want to discover something about the culture, you must find something special from different provinces. So they put workstations that discover the craftsmen and craftsmanship from different provinces, which means the Chinese government thinks that the most special things of our culture can come from our crafts. That's what makes the craft revival so important in China now.
Well, with all this work from workstations, hopefully after the pandemic, some people can come and visit Qingzhou and see this new lacquer city, a whole development focused around lacquer, which will be quite something. But I just wanted to share a memory with Professor Chen, which was when we decided to, there was an exhibition of lacquer works and beautiful works from all over the world that you had gathered also in your research trips through China. And we decided that it would be very interesting to view these works, not by the normal electric light of the gallery, but by candlelight. And I think that was something that you thought of, Huan Liu, from your reading of some Japanese text, is that right?
Yeah, the book is about the shadows, the light and the shadows. Yeah.
Kevin, I made it by lacquer produced in Jingzhou workstation. It's a dog.
What is
like
it?
a dog.
A
It's
dog.
some kind of it's some kind of fruits I made by the lacquer.
Right. It's strange because it's being blurred, because you have a blurred background. If you put it in front of your face, we can see it.
Okay.
I see.
Can you see it clear?
Yes, sort of. It looks like a strange growth on your face. But you can see the darkness of it, the blackness that find you. So I think that was an interesting understanding, influenced by the Japanese aesthetics of shadows in lacquer. That the idea of viewing an exhibition by candlelight, which revealed a particular softness in the lacquer, and also of course, the sparkle of the sprinkled gold dust and other elements that had been inlaid into the lacquer as well. It was quite a magic experience, which I expect the new lacquer city in Qingzhou can recreate for people.
We should have an exhibition at night to show people, only open at night to show people all the lacquer wares.
Yes, by candle.
Yeah.
As Peter's reminded us, it's In Praise of Shadows by Tanizaki, which speaks to a broader appreciation of lacquer, not just in China, but in Japan and South Korea and of course Vietnam, which is very strong in lacquer as well. And there are some lacquer artists in Australia too. Any other questions or comments? While we wait, I wonder, Professor Chen, if you could just elaborate on what you see as the culture of lacquer.
The culture of
like we think of it as being like a bowl or an object that we can adorn our homes with and so on. But is it more than that, the culture of lacquer? Does it have other elements to it?
Yes. I try to experience because I was doing the art theories. I can't do crafts, but after I involved in the Jinzhou workstation, I try to learn something about lacquer art. I think lacquer art is some kind of art about time. You must have a patience to paint one day for just once, and wait for dry. And it's very strange that it can't dry in the hot weather. It in the dry weather. It must have some it have some 刘欢那个湿度怎么说
Humidity.
Yeah. It needs some moisture in the air. So each time you can just do one time. It's a art of 10, and it's like something. If you do once in a day, it is just like something. It's just like something happening in your life. You keep to do something one day for once. Do you mean what I mean? And in the ancient China, the lacquer art is connected to Taoism. For example, the Zhuangzi, the Laozi and the Zhuangzi, it is Taoism, the philosopher in pre-Qin dynasty. The Zhuangzi once was is a gardener for lacquer tree, Zhuangzi. So I think maybe the Taoism, the culture of Taoism is very close to the culture of lacquer. It's a way of life. Is a way of life. Is connected to the nature, and especially when you go to the forest of lacquer tree, you have a more experience about that, because the lacquer tree has many functions. For example, in the Badung County, everyone who is older than 45 years, he will prepare a coffin for himself. And each year he will paint a coffin by the lacquer, and the lacquer tree planted by this man. Do you know, it's a feeling, very interesting feeling.
Oh, that's amazing. Certainly. I think one of the projects that we have at the Knowledge House for Craft is to compile a dictionary of world craft to understand the different cultural perspectives on objects and making. And you speak about Taoism, obviously, as being an important element in appreciation of craft. And I know there was some discussion around the concept of wu gan, which was the feeling of objects. And this seemed to be quite important because in the West, we look at objects as having meaning, which is about our experience. Maybe it has a memory for us. Maybe we say beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but it is something that we bring the aesthetic experience to the object, whereas wu gan seems to suggest that the object itself can make us feel something. And this is very different. So this seems to be a very important perspective to develop further. And I'm interested to know if this is a subject of much discussion amongst craft scholars in China.
Yes, especially for the material of nature lacquer, people will be infected by if they don't take care, it will be infected by this material. That means you must respect the material. So that is what you say. It has some lives inside the material and the lacquer.
Mm. Certainly. So are there particular journals where people publish scholarship around crafts in China at the moment?
Yes, for example, the Zhuangshi, the Journal of Zhuangshi, founded in 1958 in our college, Academy of Arts and Design. Once we was the Central Academy of Arts and Crafts, founded in 1956. And in 1958, the founders of our academy, they initiate a magazine. It's called 装饰, it means decoration. It's decorated art, decoration. And they think the decoration will make the life more beautiful.
Yes, it would be very interesting to look at the dialogue with Mingei around that as well, the Japanese
Mingei.
appreciation of the everyday object to live a
Yes,
beautiful
yes.
life and what this meant.
Yes, yes. A scholar in China whose name is Professor Xu Yiyi, he translated a lot of books about Mingei into Chinese.
Yes, we hope to have a discussion. Liliana, I think you might be helping us look at the impact of Mingei, as well as in Japan, also in Brazil. And it's certainly been very important here in Australia as well. So finding parallels in China for this will be very important and help in terms of our understanding of a global picture of craft and its value in people's lives.
Yes, in Hangzhou, in Hangzhou, in the Central China Academy of Fine Arts, there is a museum. Its name is Mingei Museum. They collect everyday objects, the traditional crafts into this museum, and they have very excellent exhibitions. And the curator is my colleague. His name is Hang Jian, Professor Hang Jian.
Good.
But unfortunately, we are not good at speaking English. That is something difficult for us to share.
Yes. Oh, well, the lacquer can speak for itself
Okay.
in that case, and the objects too. Just because when people will view this video, they won't see the chat. I just want to note that Liliana did share with us that Japanese immigrants also brought lacquer to tree, and they even planted lacquer trees in Brazil. Peter wanted to know the name of the tree that produces the lacquer. What is the name of the tree that makes the lacquer? Professor Chen, can you?
Lacquer
We
tree.
just call it the lacquer tree.
The
Lacquer
lacquer
tree.
tree. Okay.
Yeah.
And a message from Peishuan. Would you like to ask that question yourself? Peishuan is working with us in Garland magazine, recently returned to China and is currently in quarantine. So would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, sure, my pleasure. Yeah, hi, Professor Chen. I just curious about the philosophy in Chinese people's mind in the ancient about they have the value about home and about the so I just curious about the what's the influence on the craft from their philosophy value.
Okay. You know, in ancient China, the crafts is some kind of technology at that time. Is also an industry to support everyday life. So the government in the Asian China, they will control the materials and the technology, and is a government running workshops in the Asian China, and they have a lot of things about like something mathematics of the crafts, and the literati, the scholars that do you know the literatis, the scholars in Asian China, they fascinated with a lot of everyday objects made by craft. For example, the teapots or something, they use the papers and the pens, and they wrote a lot of books about what they like. These things are influenced by the value of literati. But in Asian China, they don't have some kind of theory about something like the Mingei, because the Mingei movement is a modern movement. The people is equal, but in the ancient, people is not equal.
Thank you.
Yeah, I see.
Antoine.
Thank you so much.
One other image we have of scholars in ancient China is very ascetic individuals. There was a great interest in the inkstone, this beautiful object for creating ink that had its own carving, its own images. Of course, there's the scholar's rock. It was often a stone that was placed, as well as calligraphy and the various other elements that was part of the life of a scholar that spoke of a very different application than, say, a more bureaucratic model of the academic in the modern period. So it's very interesting to see what you're doing, Professor Chen, in the workstation of very practically getting involved. I just wonder, have you actually tried to work with lacquer yourself? Had you had much experience of working with it?
Sorry, could you repeat?
Have you had much experience yourself personally of working with lacquer?
Just this thing. I just try. Yeah. I want to mention one book. Is a superfluous things. Do you know the Craig? Is a British Craig Cranas. She studied a book from Ming Dynasty. The book's name is Superfluous Things.
Superfluous things.
Yes, I will test in the superfluous things. It means non-function and useless things. That is all. This is things fascinated by the scholars. They have very complicated taste about these things, and they even they are friends with the craftsmen, and they'll do something together. Is a famous book in Ming Dynasty, and the great Kronos. I will type his name in the chat box.
It seems to me, Professor Chen, that the university is a really good partnership for something like this work of craft, because it isn't something that really operates outside, you know, in a monetary sense. To do this kind of work, it makes a lot of sense that it's about culture building, that it's coming at its beginning from the results may be economic benefit, but it's hard to do that outside of that support from the institutions.
Sorry, what is your question?
More a comment that
Okay.
that the university connection with the university makes sense, because the connection with industry is very complicated and difficult, as you said, because it's not so much about making money as the incentive. It's about the cultural and life value. So the university is the right place to be having that conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one of the activities that we're looking at is a reading process whereby a group of individuals look at different parts of the same book and then come together and share that knowledge. And so this may be one of those books. Certainly some of the classics of Chinese philosophy, Taoism, for instance, I think could be quite important for understanding what you've been telling us so far. I think we're just about on the hour. So unless anyone has something which they would like to ask or share, we can wrap it up and say that the next talk will be from Japan by Sachiko Tameshiga, who is a wonderful craft writer and scholar in Kyoto. And she's written for us about the sword in Japan. And we often think of the sword again as something quite belonging to the past and to the ancient period. But for her, she focuses on the act of maintaining the sword, the polishing of metal, and what this has meant in Japanese culture. So I think it'll be a very good opportunity to keep expanding our understanding of craft thinking beyond the standard model that we see in many galleries and museums, not just to involve the senses like smell and sound and touch, but also the processes that maintain it, which are to keep the object gleaming and polished. And this as being something which has value and meaning as well as the object itself. And I think that could be quite interesting, certainly from a Japanese perspective. But I wanted to thank you, Professor Chen, for sharing with us, for being very open and inspiring us with what's happening in China and giving us a glimpse of the kinds of dialogues that can continue into the future. And thanks everyone for your questions and for your presence. I think this has been quite auspicious and hopefully the beginning of many other discussions to come, which particularly focus on the role of the academy of the university working in partnership with communities to use its skills to help recover and coordinate efforts to revive crafts, and in the process tying in with elements like tourism and the local economies and communities, pride and so on. And I think it would be wonderful if other universities were to look at this model and think about the possibilities that would have in other countries as well. So Sheshe, thank you very much, Professor Chen, and thank you so much, everyone, for being part of it. And hopefully see you at the next Reinventing the Wheel series on the 14th of September with Sachiko Tameshiga. And so farewell and stay safe, everyone, and look after your mind and body during troubling times, and keep using these platforms to connect with each other.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to you all.